How's it going, everyone? I'm Dono and this is How to Happy. In this video, we're going to be talking about how to have better conversations by focusing on not one-upping people. Let's go over a scenario where you're telling me a story about how you almost just got in a crash and you were driving, somebody ran you off the road, and it seems like I'm pretty much paying attention. Then the second you're done with your story and it's winding up, boom, I jump right into my own story and I'm like, oh my gosh, this just happened to me too. Last week, I was driving around, this guy almost ran me off the road, but then there was 3 cars and I hit one of them and the other guy hit me. There's a good chance in a scenario like that where I just jump in right after your story that you're gonna feel a little bit off-put. The question is why, right? Like, I'm just trying to relate by telling you a story that's similar to the one you told me. You had an experience, I had a similar experience. What could be wrong with that? Let me break down a few reasons why doing something like that, where you just relate a similar story, even if it's not, like, oh wow, that just happened and this was even crazier, how it could potentially kind of disrupt a conversation that you're having. The first is that in an experience like the one we were talking about, it's really emotionally charged. So if someone is coming to you and telling you this story, there's probably a couple things that they want to unpack, right? They're feeling kind of charged up about it. If you immediately go into another story, then you have kind of taken some of their ability to vent away because you're switching the narrative to your story as opposed to theirs. Even if your intentions are good to try to relate with them by sharing something similar, you may come off as trying to one-up them. Launching directly into your story without giving them the full space to kind of talk about and discuss their experience may make it seem like you're not really interested in their story and you just want to talk about yourself. The other piece of it is it may seem like you're not even listening, right? A lot of times people will start figuring out what they're going to say instead of actively listening to the other person. People aren't dumb. They notice when this happens. They notice when you've tuned out, and when you jump in without really letting the discussion go anywhere else, it's obvious, and that can be off-putting to some people. Even if your intent is just to share an experience with them, that doesn't necessarily get communicated. It's however it's perceived. So if you haven't made it clear that you do care and are paying attention, you could potentially come across this way. One other reason the conversation could potentially get a little weird is the person telling the story might feel like you're actively trying to one-up them. Even if that's not your intent, when you start telling the story, especially if you say, something like, oh wow, something like that just happened to me, except this was even crazier. Even though, like I was saying, you may just be trying to share with them, it may feel like you're not listening and trying to have a better story and take attention away. You can give off the impression something along the lines of, that's really dumb, listen to this, your story doesn't even matter because my life has way more interesting things going on in it. When you do things like that, it says to the other person basically that their story isn't important, which to them, it is important because they brought it up to you in the first place. Now, if you're consistently trying to use this strategy to relate to people where they tell you a story, you try to tell a similar story, you might come off as one-upping them, and then before long, they don't want to talk to you at all, and you get a little bit confused what happened. Luckily, there's a couple things you can do to combat this potential perception, and we'll go over a few of them real quick. The first is that before you go into sharing your own story, engage with the other person's story a little bit. Ask about some details, so if it's about a car crash, ask, oh, did anyone see it? Did anyone else pull over? Or just questions to show, one, that you are actually interested, and 2, that you're definitely listening and paying attention. That way the person telling the story has enough space to vent out whatever they want to talk about and share their emotions if it's an emotionally charged story. And in addition to that, you then can come in with your story later, and that can create a much stronger connection than just jumping straight into your story, because you've already proven that you're listening and care about what they're saying. On that note, when you do bring up your story, you can also make the experience even stronger by relating it back to what they said. So for example, if you're in the middle of your crash story and you say, wow, when I got in mine, the airbag didn't even come out and I thought I was gonna die. When you got in your crash, did your airbag come out? Something to kind of relate it and again, show that you're paying attention and care about their experience. Because relating is not about just saying, I did this, you did that. It's about finding connections. To be clear, I'm not saying, don't share your stories, only ask questions. Like, of course you can share stories to create connections with people. All I'm saying is to be aware of the way that you do this to make sure that you're coming across how you intend to. As much as possible, my recommendation would be to make sure that you have built understanding or communicated understanding of their concerns and story before you jump into your own. That way they know that you care and aren't trying to one-up them. A big, huge chunk of having good conversations and creating relationships is just letting people know that you care about them. So the more that you can communicate this, the more likely it is that you're gonna have interactions that end positively. One other point, don't let this little distinction take over your natural way of speaking. I don't make this video or bring this point up to try to say like you need to be perfect in every single circumstance. It's more of a matter of self-reflection to be aware of the way that you're coming across, because sometimes it can be really difficult to know how other people are perceiving you. The other part of it is a lot of us have strategies for communicating and relating that are close but need to be tweaked just a little bit, and when they are, the outcomes are actually significantly better. This is not meant to dictate every single situation. So for example, if you've known someone for a really long time and you have no problem just jumping back and forth between stories, that's not a big deal. This is more for people that you're still trying to know and understand to make sure that you come across the way that you want to. Finally, just try to remember that perception is what matters. Your intent, even though it may be good, even though you're just trying to relate with people, it only matters how you're perceived. So pay attention to how you're coming across, and hopefully over time that'll help you have more and more positive interactions. Now for the exercise. Number 1, think of a time you felt someone was trying to one-up you. Why do you think they did that? Do you think it's a case of they were genuinely trying to show that they were better than you in some way? Or do you think maybe they were trying to relate, but their strategy was a little bit off? And number 2, think of at least one conversation where sharing your story may have come across as one-upmanship. If you can think of a time where someone told you something and you jumped into something else without really validating what they were saying, see if you can reflect on that experience and gain some more insight out of it. That's all for this video. As always, if you have any questions, comments, topics you want me to cover, feel free to put them down in the box below, and I will see you next time.
You can check out more content at howtohappy.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you can stay up to date on the videos. We've also got a Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook that you can check out. Reflect, take action, and enjoy life. See you next time.